Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Goodcast Show. So my guest today, he's one who has made history. He made history in 2018 when he became Malaysia's youngest minister called to cabinet when he was appointed as Minister of Youth and Sports. His political resume is nothing but impressive. He has co-founded parties Bersatu, where he then became the leader of the Armada Bersatu's youth wing. After his expulsion from Bersatu, he then went on to form the Malaysian United Democratic Alliance, Muda. His journey in politics has been a rollercoaster ride filled with highs and lows, shocking turns and eye-raising moves. During his time as Minister of Youth and Sports, he successfully lowered the voting age to 18. He courts controversy consistently, fighting for a myriad of issues, including fair allocation of funds to all members of parliament, freedom of speech, police brutality, reforming the pension scheme for cabinet ministers, among others. Today's discussion is meant to determine the man behind the smile. While several have called him a seeker of popularity, I'm here to find out if he is a posturing politician or a purposeful policy maker. Please welcome the first member of parliament on the podcast, member of parliament of Muar, YB Syed Saddiq bin Syed Abdul Rahman. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much for having me on board.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. I think when I announced that you were coming on, I became a local star in my family. They were like, wow, it's amazing.
Please do send them my warmest regards.
Will do. Definitely will do. In fact,
I just hope that the audience can actually see how tall you are in person. Man, you make me look like a dwarf, you know.
Yeah, a lot of guests say the same thing. Yeah. In fact, last time I told my unborn child, I said, don't come out today. Come out tomorrow. Now, let's get to it. Let's talk about the current issue that is basically something that you're championing, which is fair government allocations for all members of parliament. Now, one thing that cannot be denied, YB, is that you are, in a lack of a better word, a principled politician. You fight for principles and you're very principled in your moves. I've seen it. You left Pakatan Harapan Coalition to protest the conditional discharge granted to Datuk Sri Zahid Hamidi.
Yeah.
Now, as a result of this, one could argue that this could be the cause why you have yet to receive your allocations.
Yeah.
Among that also, Muda was, I think early last year, was not invited to the first Unity Government Secretariat meeting.
Yeah.
And then after that, you have also lamented the continuous delay to the Tunku Mahathir Ismail Youth Centre project.
Yeah.
And of course, recently, the DPM has announced that 2.7 million has been allocated to Muar for 60 projects. Yeah. And it seems like they are sidestepping you. And because he clearly stated in that article that this is at the ministerial level, right? So sidestepping you. Have your principles hindered the progress of your party and affected the welfare of your constituency?
I think first and foremost, taking a principled stance should not lead to the innocent rakyat being punished. And this is not only something which involves Muar, but it is of a national policy which is regressive, where members of parliament who give blind support to the government will be given 20 million in one term, while those in opposition will immediately be stripped of 20 million of important constituency allocations. And these constituency allocations are not like, merely for development. This is for basic welfare assistance. If you're old and you need a wheelchair, if you come from an underprivileged family and you need a monthly food bank, these are all things which are cut off on the basis of political support, which I believe is truly unprincipled and unethical. But above and beyond that, I mean, if you look at many other developed countries, and Malaysia should always aspire to be the best. If you look at many other developed countries, whether you are in government or opposition, the constituency allocations are distributed equally. And that shows how that country wants to create a system of check and balance to ensure that the opposition can play a role and the government can govern well. And I think that's what a symbol of a mature democracy is all about. I mean, when you look at the debates in parliament, often you'll see people saying, oh, the opposition could do better. The opposition should debate with facts and figures. However, what many people do not know is that when you are in government, you can hire so many different officers. You can have researchers, speech writers, etc. But once you're in opposition, with zero allocation, you are expected to open up your own service center using your own money. Above and beyond that, you will need to hire many different staff using your own pocket money as well. I mean, even if you spend 100% of your monthly salary given to you as an MP, it is still not enough, because the fact of the matter is you need to rent out your service centre, you need to hire 3 to 4 staff to ensure that your service centre can operate fully. So I think in order for us to ensure that Malaysia achieves a kind of mature democracy, we need to institutionalize this change so that whoever is in government, whether it is Datuk Sri Anwar or in the future someone else, whichever party controls Putrajaya, in the end will get fairness and equity, so that in the end, the government and opposition can focus on moving forward instead of playing regressive, unethical politics.
But isn't this just the nature of the beast? I mean, politics is definitely driven by personal ambition. One cannot deny that. And if somebody were in power, the ultimate goal would be to remain in power. And I'm not saying this Prime Minister, but any Prime Minister from the start, I think the only one who gave allocations was Ismail Sabri. That was the only person, right? It wouldn't be in their best interest to support opposition states or opposition constituencies, because they want those constituencies to come to them, right?
I'll go
and sorry, just one thing, Wabi, is also one more thing is like, do you think that at this point in time, when you left, maybe a bit premature, because to make the reforms that you are talking about, you would need a party or more number of seats, more bargaining power.
Yeah, I mean, that's a secondary point of how do we move forward? Myself and Muda, I'll answer that separately. But let's stick to the issue at hand first. I remember when I was in cabinet in 2018, 2019, then there was a discussion about what do we do with allocations. And then I remember opposition did get, it was the first time where opposition was actually allocated allocations, but not in full. But there was a bigger issue, because allocation is only about 4 million a year, but allocation to opposition states are much larger because it involves billions. For an example, for Kelantan, it was 400 million. For Terengganu, it was 1.2 billion. And for other states, like a few hundred million. So it's a huge amount, much more than allocation for MPs. And at that point in time, I vividly remember, I pushed to ensure that opposition states get their rightful allocations regardless of the parties which control the states. Because I mentioned the very basic tenet of a democratic country is that we need to acknowledge whoever has won, and whoever has won based on the mandate of the people. So when we negotiate with the Kelantan or Terengganu state government, we're not negotiating with PAS, but we're negotiating with the electorally mandated government by the people. And then I remember there were a lot of pushbacks in cabinet at that point in time saying, no, I mean, Saddiq, you're very naive. If you do this and in the end, you're just supporting one party. I said, what does that mean? I mean, we must aspire to be better. Since when are we replicating the old UMNO model by punishing opposition states, which you opposed when you were in opposition? And I was quite happy then, because in the end, we got our way and we allocated it directly to the states. And it started then. I remember then I pushed for MPs to get equal allocations. So I said, if we could do this at the state level, we should also do this at an MP level as well, to ensure that there is equity. Then government changed. I think Sheraton move happened, which I obviously disagree. And then I remember at that point in time, allocations were cut off. And I remember the very same MPs or the very same ministers who are here today said that is cruel, it is unjust, it is unfair. But today when they're in power, they shut their eyes and ears as if, past injustice done under us is okay. But if it's done under someone else, it is not okay. I think now it's worse, because you mentioned just now, it's only Ismail Sabri. Back then, we gave some allocations. When it was under Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, it was 300,000 ringgit. Under Ismail Sabri, it was equal allocations. Today, it's zero. 0 ringgit Malaysia. You mentioned just now that the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, Muar got allocations. I think I responded to this, because in Parliament, I got an official answer. Muar got this amount of allocations. I quickly looked back. I went through one by one. What are these allocations? These allocations, 90%, more than 90% of it, allocation for Pago. Because they're confusing Muar, Parliament Muar with Daerah Muar. And these are Pago allocations approved like years ago. The ones approved for Muar are ones which were approved since 2018, 2019 when I was an MP and a minister then. You mentioned about the Tunku Mahkota Ismail Youth Centre. That was part and parcel of the so-called approved allocation. I approved it in 2018, 2019. It was a while back. So the fact of the matter is today, if you are blindly loyal and supportive of government, you get 20 million, but if you're in opposition, you get 0 ringgit. You may call me naive. However, if we don't have enough naive or principled people to push the boundaries of reforms, then why bother trying to fight for change in politics? Because in the end, if politics is all about filling up the power vacuum and doing whatever it takes to stay on to power, at least have the decency to not lie to the people by calling yourself a reformist. Because the fact of the matter is, you are not, you are a liar.
Fair enough. Now, when I see as a voter, when I look at what's happening to you, you are, in a lack of a better sense, sort of like the remnants of the old guard in the parliament. It's no secret that your party is supported by the Tun family. You were once very close with Tun Mahathir. Could this be a political assassination to get the final bits of Tun Mahathir out of parliament?
I have to quickly answer this.
Okay.
First and foremost, Tun Mahathir first. Tun Mahathir played absolutely no role in the formation of Muda. If anything, if you look at the beginning of the formation of Muda, he came out with some very strong statements against it, saying that Muda will never succeed, I will fail, there's no future for multiracial politics, which I firmly disagree on that ground. The difference between me and many other politicians, when I disagree, I tell to that person in his or her face. And to be fair on that matter, today, he doesn't hate me because when there's a disagreement, it can be handled well. When you don't try to backstab someone, you say it in a person's face.
In front.
And you argue it rationally. Right? That's one. Two, I don't know where this line is coming from that Muda is being backed up by Tun Daim's family. I think the reason why is because Tun Daim's wife mentioned that she's a Muda's member. And yes, she is a Muda's member. But you think Muda is being bankrolled by...
No, I don't. I don't mean bankrolled, because you have said it in a previous, I think it was also Amira who said it, Babi Amira who said it. Now, but I think that perhaps the perception would be that them being in the party would also translate to influence.
Understood.
So influence in your party means influence in parliament.
Fair enough.
Dato Sri Anwar, and both these people don't have the best relationships with both Anwar and also Zahid. Right? So let's get him out so that enough of this, the old guard, and let's do things our way. Could that be a reason?
Understood. I'll just make two quick points here. Because to speculate how government or Datuk Sri Anwar will respond, I'm not in his shoes. Especially, I think, when he went through the 98 Reformasi time, I was in kindergarten. So to speculate what he's thinking of would be quite tough. However, just two quick points to make. I remember when we were part of government in 2018, the PH version 1.0, Datuk Sri Anwar then met up with Tun Daim many times, not in private. And he even shared it quite openly, saying that he was seeking advice from Tun Daim. What advice? Economic advice. How to manage the country economically you know. But today, I'm not sure what happened in between. But definitely then, if you proudly told the world that you are seeking economic advice from Tun Daim, I think that shows that there's some level of respect to Tun Daim. What happened in between, to be honest, I personally have absolutely no idea. But to see suddenly now saying that, this person is the worst person, corrupt person, etc., to me, there's a huge contradiction there. If you really saw him as corrupt 20 years ago, then why in 2018, 2019 saying that, this person is really smart, talented, I need to seek economic advice? That's the first point to make. The second point to also make here is this is where I need to give credit to Tun Daim. I remember when I was serving in KBS, then being a very young minister, I didn't have much connections, right? And what I can tell you, Tun Daim is not someone who you rely on for money. This is what I think is quite odd. Even then, even including to today. But words of wisdom or connecting people, is a really kind gentleman. Then I remember when I wanted to pursue for Undi 18, and Undi 18, I had to be bipartisan, and I had not much connections in PAS, in UMNO, in GPS in particular. So then I seek advice from Tun Daim, and it was him who introduced me to a few political figures in Sarawak, in Sabah, and especially in PAS. Because, he's been there for a very long time, and very quickly in 24 hours, I could get in touch and I could meet up with them, and then that's where I could take it forward. That's something which I would not be able to do if I were on my own. So, in actuality, one thing which I've learned, and this is a model which I think is quite interesting in Singapore, is that those who have served Malaysia for decades and have had their own success stories while who have retired, like in Singapore, right? They have their own minister mentors, and even those who have retired, for example, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sir George Yeo, today still plays a very important role in advising. Nothing to do about financial matters, but in advising, connecting, because the networks which they have built have been there for decades. You know, they can pick up a call, and the prime minister of another country or the former prime minister of another country can immediately respond. So I think on this end, my hope moving forward, that Malaysia will reach a point where democracy will be so matured that we can actually harness the influence and strength of leaders of the past to assist leaders of today, right? Obviously, if there are any issues or criminal elements, investigate. There's no issue, right? And there's no defense on this matter. If there's any investigation, investigate. But where areas where we can work together, rule of law, strengthening institutions, bridging connections internationally, I think Malaysia must learn on how to do that to move forward. Because if not, my fear is this vengeance, this cycle of vengeance will continue. I mean, today you do this to your opponents, next day you are in opposition and they'll do it to you, and only then you'll scream, this is a great injustice. Well, the injustice was perpetrated by you first.
From the start, exactly. Now, I want to go into, again, still sticking on this point of government allocations. You have recently it was reported that you are legally challenging the purported withholding of 730,300 ringgit allocated for Muar last year, right? Now, if I were to compare you and another politician who is also on the opposition bloc, we know him for his acrobatics on the field. One, Datuk Sri Muhammad Sanusi, Matno, Kedah Menteri Besar. Now, he, despite his shenanigans and whatever he says sometimes, I have grown to respect him in a certain way, and because he announced recently that Kedah has secured top spot in approved investments.
That's true.
Right? Amounting to 31.3 billion in Q1 of 2024 this year, right? Now, and the thing about him, and again, I respect him because he is a politician. He plays the game. He invites PMX to come and witness memorandum signings, launch of the Kulim Park and all that. Why haven't you gone that route to do the same in terms of, for example, like as what you promised early on in the elections? You said you want to provide more jobs in Muar, make it a tourist hotspot in the northern part of Johor. Why not focus on that? Because the political reality is allocations are at the discretion of the Prime Minister, right? That's the unfortunate reality. Instead of going there, why not follow his example?
Okay. First and foremost, there's a substantial difference between managing a parliament and a state.
Of course, I know.
I mean, according to the constitution, the state is given a lot of flexibility, autonomy, especially on issues of land, water, etc. And when you are part of state government, it comes with a lot of allocations as well, and managing the whole state budget, etc. However, I completely agree with you. I think people are not giving due credit to Menteri Besar Sanusi. I think what he has proven in Kedah, especially managing the economy, you look at proof investments, not just this year, but 3 years ago, I think a lot of credit should be given to him. Now to answer specifically about diplomacy. I'm a firm believer in diplomacy. What more bipartisanship? I mean, I would never have gotten Undi 18 without bipartisanship.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone who disregard the position of the Prime Minister. While I may have disagreements, it's nothing personal. These are policy disagreements. Have I negotiated? Actually, I followed exactly what the Prime Minister said since last year. Prime Minister said in Parliament, recorded in the Parliament handset, you need to negotiate with the Deputy Prime Minister too.
Yes, and you did that 3 times.
Immediately, I met up. Twice physically, 3 times surat menyurat. In total, 5 times. And then recently I asked again in Parliament towards the Prime Minister, so what else should I do? And I said, he acknowledged, firstly, there's an acknowledgement that Muar is the one who has negotiated, but then he moved the goalpost a little bit by saying, but you can't negotiate. Now you need to get the leader of opposition to negotiate on behalf of you. This is new for me. I mean, it was not brought to my attention by the Prime Minister before this. I said, now I have to go through the leader of opposition. I said, okay. But it's a funny part. Before this, it is his own supporters, his own party who said, you should not even be with PN. You shouldn't even work with PN. You shouldn't even meet up with this, with PN leaders. But today, it is an acknowledgement that I must work with them. Sure, I have no problem. I've actually met up with the leader of opposition, Datuk Sri Hamzah, not once, twice, many times. Right? And I've seen him also meet up with the Deputy Prime Minister a few times on this matter. So on this, I think you really need to look, there is diplomacy, but at the same time, you need to know where that diplomatic route will take you. Because on this, the reason why I finally took the other route, which is to sue in court, is because I've tried it so many times. When you tried so many times and you know that there is injustice which is being done, you just keep quiet. Or do I just remain naive, thinking that, oh, never mind, I'll just wait and something will happen? Previously in 2020, I didn't just wait and wait. I actually met up with the Prime Minister then, Tan Sri Muda and Yassin, to propose a confidence supply agreement. Under Datuk Ismail Sabri, I did the same. Datuk Ismail Anwar said, no, you need to follow how Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri did it. If he followed what Datuk Sri Ismail did it, we would have gotten our allocations. Yeah. I negotiated with Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri directly twice. He was very kind. He's a gentleman. He said, when he said yes, yes. When he says no, no. So he is a gentleman. My hope is someone like Datuk Ismail Anwar, who have gone through a lot of turbulence, who have been wronged in his political career, and I will not defend the injustices of the past. Yeah. I think he is someone, and his family in particular, has gone through a lot. And I'm quite sympathetic of that.
Yeah, definitely.
My hopes is someone who has gone through that kind of injustice will know that to heal and to move Malaysia forward is about looking forward and ahead, and to ensure that the past will not hinder Malaysians from moving forward. That's my hope.
But I mean, that's fair. But in terms of your political strategy, now that in that same article, apparently there is alleged that the AG may even block your request.
Oh, they have. I mean, they are trying.
So what's next?
I have to leave it to the court of law. The fact of the matter, I need to try. I need to try every single way. I need to try diplomacy. I need to try in court. I need to try in parliament. And I will try every single route possible. Similarly, how when Undi 18 took place, you only saw what happened in parliament. You didn't see all the negotiations which happened behind.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot happened.
I will try using every single route possible. But is this the only single issue which I bring up? No. In parliament, out of like 10 issues, this is just like half of it. I mean, not half, is it 1 out of the 10 which I raise up. My role as a member of parliament in Muar continue. You mentioned just now about then what can I do in Muar? In terms of tourism in Muar, I think now it has skyrocketed so much. We have been promoting Muar so much in Singapore. We have ensured that all the tourism amenities in Muar is getting better, has been upgraded. In terms of the two major industries, which is nursery and also furniture. They export close to 10 billion per annum, 300 containers a day out of Muar. And these are two huge economic amplifiers. And this is something which we've been working on since my first term in parliament. Above and beyond that, to ensure that Muar becomes a livable city. Because back then, what Muar is so well known for, being a city for retirement. In Bahasa, people say bandar orang besara. So that's why when I was a minister, I brought the youth hub to Muar, a 25 million ringgit allocation. And then it was supposed to also come with a public swimming pool. But when the government changed, they scrapped the public swimming pool, but they still kept the other components. And today, it's about to be ready. And I think it's about to be launched in 1 or 2 months, right? The Tunku Mahkota Ismail Youth Centre. And on this, I must give credit to Tunku Mahkota, because he came up with the idea of creating youth hubs across Johor, not just in Muar, and he resolved the land issue, which I couldn't. As a minister, I can only get allocations. Land is under the state, and Tuanku played a very big role in resolving this issue. But I'm trying my best in the smallest of ways to keep on improving the situation in Muar while I combat things on a federal level.
But do you think that approach has sort of cannibalized your work that you are doing now? It sort of cannibalizes what you're doing, because instead of people focusing on what you do outside of it, they should hear these stories, because doesn't that help build your profile as a political leader and a future, perhaps, prime minister? Shouldn't that be the focus? And maybe you are your worst enemy in this case.
I mean, there must be a balance, right? Because if you don't play your role as a check and balance, then you won't get the institutional change and reforms. What more, you don't build the expectation of the public to understand what's going on. I mean, just to share one small anecdotal experience. When I was doing my run from Muar to Parliament, I got so many texts coming from friends, family members, and people I've never met, saying that they never knew that allocations were given differently if you're in government or
even my father today was so surprised when I told him that.
Many people didn't know.
No one knows,
But in order for you to get reform, the start of that reform must be basic awareness.
Yes.
If people don't know, people won't demand the government or the MPs to institute or legislate for that change. So I agree with you. At the same time, I mean, if I wanted to go hardcore opposition all the way, which is to say, I don't even recognize my prime minister. There are some, there are some who actually do that. But I don't. I mean, I recognize the prime minister. I recognize the government of the day. I want to ensure that there is stability, and I want to fight on issues and policies And when it comes to politics, let's deal with it during times of election, which is 3-4 years from now. It's so far away, right? Yeah. And this toppling, this is not me, right? I'm focusing really on being a good opposition member.
Okay. Now, again, I do appreciate that, and I do acknowledge that as well. I think a lot of people in my circle, especially the non-Malays, they look up to you. You, especially when you first came in, we were all so excited because you were the sort of signaling of a new political era. And I like the way that you are. You're not just, hard on and saying, no, I'm not going to support Anwar and just banging your fist wherever you can. You choose your topics.
Yeah.
But having said that, and you mentioned your run, I didn't want to talk about it, but since you brought it up, I have to ask this question.
Please do.
Bersatu you, Chief, you were the special guest in the Langkah Wan Faisal, who barged into your press con, pushed you aside and took center stage. But anyway, all jokes aside, he is another example of a problem in politics today. He represents a politician who leverages on trends. He doesn't really say anything that, to me, doesn't. I want to hear my MPs talk about policies. I want to hear them talk about reforms. I don't want to hear them talk about small. For example, he once suggested that Grab was a private entity that fell under Ministry of Finance. And this is a member of parliament. He also recently in parliament, we saw YB Pendang accuse YB Jerutong of being anti-Muslim.
But that's different. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is all from that same block, right? And we've grown accustomed to this racial, religious rhetoric that's coming out from that side. Do you think that the current crop of politicians will gravitate to your form of liberal and inclusive politics?
Okay, let me go one by one, right? Number one,
sorry, too many questions. Sorry.
No, it's perfectly fine. To be fair, and I have to be fair to YB1. When he appeared at the end of my run, at the final stage, I invited MPs from both sides, including friends from Pakatan Harapan. But the ones who turned up was actually YB Razi Jidin and also YB Wan Mat Faisal.
Yes.
And I remember there's one particular instance, people say, oh, he took the limelight because during the PC he spoke. I mean, people forget actually before the PC, I spoke first.
Yeah.
And I opened it up to everyone. It wasn't just him. There were a few other MPs who spoke. But obviously, I think there's some very naughty people who just singled him out. You know what's funny? People didn't speak much about YB Putrajaya. He was there. He was there from the beginning.
I saw
so I think that's just one point to make. And I, especially as a member of opposition, on an issue which is as important as this, I need the support of as many MPs as possible. I cannot be arrogant. I mean, he is elected YB of Machang with a huge majority, right? And that is an UMNO stronghold which he dislodged, and he's the elected rep. So that's one. Two, obviously there are issues where there are disagreements. There are some issues which even he disagreed with me, right? I mean, he was my former officer before, and then he became the deputy minister and also took my post as a youth chief. Is there any hard feelings for me? To be honest, none. I don't harbor hard feelings. But for an example, some issues which involve race and religion, obviously there are disagreements. And I've made that quite public. However, does it mean, for an example, on every single issue in parliament, people will have the same train of thought as I do? Of course not.
No.
What I can tell you, sir, is that issues which revolve around race and religion, sadly, pervade not just one particular side as well. Because in parliament, I mean, and I follow parliamentary debates very, very well. I think my attendance in parliament is 100%. I engage in many debates. I try myself to get on the debate list almost all the time. Some I am successful, some I'm not. What I can say, and this is me being fair to the opposition, sure there are those who will occasionally, you mentioned a few guys at Pendang is quite naughty, who will bring the issues of race and religion. But I think if there is someone who actually does research, and I'm pretty sure there could be parliamentary researchers who look at the handset, right, and use AI, and look out of like 100%, what will the opposition talk about? Maybe 10, 20%, there will be issues of race and religion, but 80% are actually substantive policy issues. Sad part is, because it doesn't capture people's imagination. Or the media, it doesn't get talked about. I mentioned one other example, YB Fadli Sha'ari, right, from PAS. I saw his speech at one point in time in parliament. He was speaking about minimum wage. He was talking about paid internships. He was talking about ensuring that reforms lead to decentralization of control of power, And then there's one thing which he mentioned about religion. Obviously, front page, it became about the last thing which he mentioned, which he only mentioned less than 1 minute,
Okay.
So that's just one thing to mention as well. But if you want me to also mention how the other side plays race and religion, I can. And I can give you a whole list of things in parliament which they do exactly the same as well. Right? So on this, I'm trying my best to be as fair as possible. For an example, today, very sensitive issue. To me, it shouldn't be sensitive, but it is sensitive, right? For an example, where a particular fundraiser is held in a school and a part of the sponsorship comes from an alcoholic company, right?
Oh, yes.
Tiger.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, to me, some will look at this issue of race, religion. I'm wearing my policy hat. Immediately what I'm reminded of, I remember, when I was youth and sports minister, we were barred and banned from accepting any sponsorship from cigarette companies, liquor companies, gambling companies. Even if they do, for an example, for Sports Toto, it's not contribution. We tax them. We force them. And when they give it towards a pool of funds,
the syntax.
they cannot promote it at all as, this is from us. They can't. Then it is distributed so it's not promotion. But what happened recently is clear-cut promotion in the school. So I'm thinking again, as a matter of policy, so if we can't do it in sports, right? And this is it's not just for liquor companies, it's for other so-called
big tobacco and all this,
tobacco and others. So does this mean after this, if Marlboro wants to sponsor a school directly and put Marlboro's logo huge, like in front of the school, is that possible?
No, it shouldn't be allowed.
Exactly.
Not, yeah.
So let's just have a proper policy on this matter. Let's say if they want to contribute through a consolidated fund without having their logo or anything, there are precedents where that could be done. So to me, it is a policy issue.
Yeah.
But today, have you seen, now it is a racial issue, including those in government, right? So to me, I mean, I start to realize that maybe I'm living my own bubble thinking that, not everyone will look. Issues of race and religion, I'm living in my own bubble thinking everyone can be moderate, everyone can find a center path, which is not easy. So what should I do? Do I just bend down and pander? No. I try find that middle ground. I think the middle ground is always in terms of a policy framework. You can find that middle ground.
Yeah, but also you could be more vocal in parliament, especially against people like Dr. Akmal Saleh. When the whole Socksgate matter was happening,
I never agree with that.
Yeah, he came out and he was very... I understand, okay, maybe the first few seconds you can be passionate because this is a serious issue, right? But then he kept on going and then we saw things... I wouldn't say it was a direct causality, but there must have been an indirect element here whereby you see people physically, throwing cocktails, what do you call that?
Molotov
cocktails into KK mart shops. Then there should be a say, okay, wait a minute, we've gone too far. And thank God people like KJ who voiced out, said, look, enough, you've made your point, enough. People need to be more vocal against this, right? Yeah. Because it annoys me. Okay, the issue happened, people have voice, they have investigated enough, but they just go on.
Yeah.
But in parliament, did you oppose that?
I did, outside and inside.
Okay.
Not just me. It was a party stance as well.
Okay.
Because as you know, today I'm just a member.
Yes. No significance at all.
Young Setia. Loyal party member. But just to share on this matter as well, right? I mean, every time, whenever there is an issue of race and religion, people will point a finger to PN. You notice who are the demagogues in this particular matter?
It's BN.
Yeah, and the PN guys were actually quite quiet on this matter because I remember that was during the month of Ramadan. And a sincere apology was made for me. I mean, I don't want to speak for others. Now I'm speaking for myself. It was done during the month of Ramadan.
Yes.
A sincere apology was made. And the apology was not made when there was public uproar. People thought that the apology was made only after.
No, it was before. The press con. Yeah.
There were 2 press cons. People forget. People only look at the press con on Friday and Saturday. There was actually an earlier one on Wednesday. Even before this issue went up, there was a sincere apology. And when there is a sincere apology, and you can differentiate whether something is intentional or not, if it's sold everywhere, and like you don't want to back down, you double down on it. This is like in the hundreds and hundreds of KK marts. It only exists in like 1 or 2, and even then out of hundreds, there's only like 1 or 2 defective items. Yeah. So you don't have to double down, triple down, right? I mean, if there was a sincere mistake, apologize, let's move forward as a country, let's heal and move forward. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even expect for there to be a criminal prosecution against him. And there was a criminal prosecution. So to me, I mean, it's gone wrong on both ways, right? I mean, 1 is politics, but 2, when you put someone and a family to criminal prosecution, what more when a company is about to go through public listening.
Yes.
What message are you sending to the business community and towards the multiracial agenda of Malaysia? So on this issue, I think, and
plus
there
the
are
thing
many
is,
other issues.
But just one more point is that a large portion of their workforce are actually Malay.
Correct.
Anyway.
Correct.
No, okay, so let's move on, because you mentioned something very interesting just now. You said that you need friends.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to that. So the reforms that you want to implement, that you are pushing for, require more bargaining power on your end. You as a party need to have considerably more number of seats. So there are two ways you can go about it, right? It's either you become the BN of all, where you have the simple majority, or you have a large number of seats in a coalition, much like what DAP and PAS are doing as the two strongest parties in our parliament. Now, if I compare you with PMX, when he was expelled from UMNO, he set up his own party. He organized protests. He had people like Azmin Ali organizing protests for him. He had also the support, backing of NGOs, like for example, like Bersih and all that. He had blogs. He had certain portals who were permeating his news and all that kind of stuff. But when I look at Muda and yourself, it seems like you guys are sort of like in no man's land. And the reality in politics is you need to follow that. You need the numbers to make changes, right? What is your plan for the party and yourself to finally get to a point where you can implement your changes that you want?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm nowhere close to Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim. When I say nowhere close, that's credit to him. I mean, he was a former Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. I think what him and his family went through
25 years,
was a lot more than what I would even think of going through. Okay, so I think that is to his credit. And remember, then he was able to work together with PAS, and then it was quite controversial, pull the AP together. So yeah, I mean, for me, someone who's just turning 31, 32, I have a lot more to learn. And obviously, I think for Muda, we have a lot more to learn as well. It took PKR, 2-3 decades before they can get to where they're at today. And for Muda, we're just entering our third year. I mean, we were only formed properly with our birth certificate in January 2022, which is very recent. So yeah, I think that's just the first point to make. But two, I agree with you. I have to be realistic and strategic, right? Strategic means that I need to have the critical mass of support in Parliament, and that's why, where I can, I'll try my best to work with everyone, regardless of parties. For example, on issues of equal allocations, I do work with the opposition bloc, with Perikatan Nasional. On issues of ensuring that there will be a smooth transition to rationalized subsidies, to ensure that there's check and balance, I do work with the opposition bloc. For example, even before the diesel subsidy removal was announced, last year I already proposed a few measures. Number one, government must give a lot more time for Sabah and Sarawak to transition, because they need more time, because over there, unlike here, you need to have a 4x4 car to even move from one location to another, because roads there are just horrendous in comparison to road infrastructure in Semenanjung. And government actually took that proposal. Two, I even signaled, I said, before you implement any policy, you need to ensure that there's at least a 6 months timeline given before the public is ready. And on this, I think government had a big screw up, because they only announced it like the Budi Madani in such a short time frame and then removed it. And that's why you realize until today, the take-up rate of the subsidy, people who actually deserve it, they don't get it. More than 50% who deserve it don't get it, because they don't know about it. They thought before this, I've already registered for Padu, and that's enough. And that's where you see prices of goods still increasing, while actually the government is still giving out targeted subsidies. But the targeted subsidies are not being approved. Or people who thought they couldn't get it actually can. So, I mean, the point is I'm just mentioning that you can still work with multiple different parties and groups to get outcomes which you want. So that's,
but sorry, just on that point, I agree with you. I think this government, one of their biggest problems is their communications.
Definitely.
Horrible. Top to bottom.
110%. Yeah. So one is working with MPs. But there's another route which I'm more optimistic about. The other route is by galvanizing public support. Malaysia today is very different than Malaysia 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if there's a major media PR screw up, government can make, opposition can make as much noise, government will just like, I don't care, let's just move forward. Today, whether you're in government or opposition, you are very sensitive of public opinion, because you know that public opinion determines your election. So that's where, for an example, there are many instances, issues which I raise. I give one simple example. When I was in opposition under Tan Sri Muhyiddin's time, then during times of emergency, suddenly there was this multi-billion-dollar deal of privatizing the Subang airport, the golden goose of Malaysia airports, was about to be privatized during times of emergency via a direct nego concession, which is clearly wrong, right? And at that point in time, technically, if you follow numbers, government will still have the numbers. It was during times of emergency, they can legislate and approve it. But I just did the whole expose, step by step. I galvanized public support, got support of GLCs and GLICs to come together as well. And in the end, government had to make a U-turn. That was successful. Under Datuk Sri Anwar's government, I showed issues about diesel subsidy, or another one about the tax exemption for SSPN. Right? Back then, parents who invest in their children's SSPN account will be given a tax break, a special tax break. And then government announced no more. And I raised this issue up. I got many others to raise the issue up. We came together. In 48 hours, government made a U-turn. Is this U-turn bad for the government? No, it's not bad. I mean, any government will have to make U-turns. I think it's better for them to make a U-turn than to just be arrogant and
implement it.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is public voices matter a lot more today than before.
Yeah.
So on this, I think Muda must be smart enough to work very closely with civil societies, with the public at large, to get the reform agenda through.
Of course, I agree. And interesting that you say that. So now I want to get into your policies that you have championed. One of it, of course, I mean, let's go way back, is Undi 18. That was one of the things that you're very proud of. I've heard you talk about this on many interviews. But why was it important to lower the voting age?
Sure. Okay, firstly, people only look at Undi 18, but forget that it came as a package. There's Undi 18, there's Undi Automatic, and there's Calon 18. All three constitutional amendments in together. Let me just briefly mention why it is so important. People often debate this issue from a partisan lens. Oh, these young people support me, they don't support me, they support this coalition or not. I didn't look at that lens at all. What I looked is a systemic issue of disenfranchisement of youth voters in Malaysia, which in the end will lead to youth voices being sidelined. I'm pretty sure you have heard of this issue, or young people, they don't care about politics, they won't turn up to vote.
Or they don't know about politics.
Or they don't know, they are ignorant, etc., etc. You know, that actually translates into real problems in the budget. So if you are a policymaker, if you are a policymaker and you know, young people, they don't turn up to vote, they're ignorant, they don't care, or we can just buy them all 50 ringgit, 100 ringgit. So in the budget, will you actually take concrete steps to legislate policies which are youth-centered? You won't, because whenever you need to balance things out, it's better for me to just ensure that the retirement age should be increased. It's better for me to ensure that the older generation get a lot more subsidies. Who will need to pay for all of that? The younger generation, my friend. They will be the one who will be impacted the most, right? So in the end, whenever there's a trade-off, in the minds of politicians pre-Undi 18, there will be young people second, older people first. So I realized that's a big problem. With Undi 18 and Undi Automatic, it shifts the power dynamics completely. And not for one elections, but for intergenerations to come. Because from young people only making up 37% of the electorate, today young people make up 55% of the electorate. They are the true and perpetual kingmakers, not just in next election, but for many other elections. And I think that matters because I show one very small example. Pre-Undi 18, I pushed for this job stimulus package together with Minister of Finance then, Sir Guaneng. It's called Malaysia Kerja or Malaysia at Work, 6.5 billion job stimulus package to deal with the issues of underemployment and also chronic unemployment in specific sectors which affect young people. It was a 6.5 billion ringgit package. At first, you know when people try to drag it out by saying, okay, maybe later. It was dragged out many times. After Undi 18 and Undi Automatic was passed, when I say, hey, we need to do this now because this involves the lives of young people who today will determine our future. Not just our future in Malaysia, but whether we win or not. I mean, youth issues.
Now
youth
you're
issues. Yeah. And you see, even UMNO passed and doing the same, bringing up youth issues. So when they raise it up, I'm very happy because it's a competition to the top of us trying to win over the voices of young people. And I think that is a kind of a progressive competitive politics which I want. When in the end, whether it's on reforming our education system, our welfare system, it is about ensuring that Malaysia is not super in debt to the point that young people have to carry that 20, 30 years ahead. These are youth issues which previously would be sidelined, which today will be put at center stage after Undi 18 and Undi Automatic.
But just a kickback on that, I as a voter, and of course I've heard this term check and balances, right? You have mentioned it as a third force and all that now, and of course Anwar mentioned it before as well. to me, I feel that the best form of check and balance for any government is an informed voter base.
Correct.
Right? It's not the third force, it's not the opposition, it's an informed voter base. When I saw Undi 18, what my issue was with it was I felt like the criteria should never be age. It should be your mentality. It should be at least, because the only parameter I know of to measure somebody's intelligence or somebody's maturity is by their education, right? If you can name me others, that's fine. We can use that. But education should be the main barometer. So perhaps you are right. In the short term, yes, this is an impact. And fantastic. I love what you're saying. And I think it should be shared more. But in the long term, what happens is it creates a voter base that is so easily influenced. And we see it in the, I think it was G15 or PRN 23, I cannot remember which one now. But where you saw an influx of young voters to PN simply because of their work on TikTok. Right? So shouldn't it be that way where there must be a barrier of entry to become a voter, because then politicians cannot get away with everything that they're doing now, because we know. What do you
Fair enough. That's a fair point. So first and foremost, I always believe that we need to give a little bit more credit to young people. You rightfully mentioned that education can be one of the barometers. But my friend, if education was a barometer, I also watched the interview with Prof. Tajuddin where he mentioned his disagreements.
Yes.
Right? But
What do you have to say to him?
No, I firmly disagree with his logic. But allow me to answer.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
if education was a barometer, that means we should give more young people the right to vote. You know why? Because young people today, about 50% of them have tertiary education above and beyond SPM, relative to the older generation, who a lot of them could vote, but don't even have that level of education background like the younger ones today, because access to education today is much better than before. Two, voting doesn't work that way. I mean, if voting is really based on education, does that mean that if you have a PhD, you have 2 or 3 votes, and if you have an SPM, your vote matters less? Or if there's someone who's 80 years old with absolutely no tertiary education compared to someone young with a PhD, that young person can vote and the old person can't.
Yeah, to reply you, that's what I'm suggesting, because I feel that politics. Okay, here's the thing. When I see some of the comments or some of the videos that I've posted recently, it kind of saddens me, because I see the trend of thinking is not as progressive which I would hope for this country.
Understood. Okay.
Right. So I think that if you have a degree and that is the only check to point of entry for you, then it makes life very difficult for politicians.
Okay. So on this, I think it's very easy to conveniently blame young people.
No. Everybody, even old people.
Yeah.
Whoever.
So let me just give you a simple example to answer. No, this is also...
Because I have to say this, a lot of my viewers are older, so you're going to make me lose a lot of subscribers now.
Now I'm also going to deal with Prof. Tajuddin's rightful criticism, right? About experience. So if you look at education, I'm just going to put it this way. Civil service today, entry level, you need to have at least CGL or some level of diploma. But yet civil service, in the past 2, state and GE, firmly voted against Pakatan Harapan. Right? So does that mean that their views are very different? Even though they are well educated, they still reject the so-called version of politics.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
That could be because they are predominantly Malay.
Yeah.
And why would they want to lose affirmative action? So
this is not about age. She's no longer blaming about Undi 18. I'll show you another very interesting fact. People blame Undi 18. Pakatan Harapan in last election got 1 percentage point higher of Undi 18 votes in comparison to PN. You know where PN won the vote most? It's not Undi 18. It's those who are 40 years and below. Between 25 to 40. Undi 18 is only 18 to 20, my friend. It's only 18 to 20. So the fundamental question is, PN tapped into a voter base which no one else cared before. These are voters who never registered to vote before. It's actually less of the Undi 18 but automatic voter registration. Who never bothered to vote before, but now have that kind of voter awakening. Similar to how in 2008, many Chinese and Indians never bothered to vote before. Young ones. And then turned out in masses, which led to BN in many states falling.
Yeah.
So on this matter, I think it's a lot more complex. Let me just, some mentioned it green wave, let me just quickly debunk it. If people think there's a sudden rise of conservatism, if there's a sudden rise of conservatism, you must have felt it like for years, because it cannot just suddenly be after 6 months. Just put it this way. In December and February, of 2022, we had 2 state elections. There was Johor and Melaka. In that Johor and state elections, PAS was like almost wiped out. BN won a huge majority. This green wave there wasn't even a green ripple, you know. They were wiped out, you know.
Okay.
BN won big. However, in less than 8 months, suddenly this green wave came about and PN won big. To me, it's not about green wave or what. It's just a collapse in Malay leadership. Because in Johor, for an example, during the state election, you had Menteri Besar Hasni, who's competent, smart, credible. And people saw him leading together with BN then, with MIC and MCA, as a good alternative. So he won and he won big. 8 months after, people saw Datuk Sri Zahid. I mean, it's nothing personal against Datuk Sri Zahid. It's not. But the point is, when you, as a Malay leader then, or as a Malay voter, you're asked to pick, will I pick Datuk Sri Zahid, Datuk Sri Anwar, or Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin? They picked Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin. Right? So, however, in the future, will the Malays always vote that way? No. I mean, they are quite complex. I mean, they are very complex, they are smart, they're sophisticated. Will that forever be the case? It will change.
So you think that PH will eventually overcome their lack of, I would say, the lack of appeal with Malay voters? It's no secret that 80% still don't vote for others compared to them.
Today, it's not just PH, it's PH and BN who's suffering from that. The PH today, remarkably tough. And because, let me just put it this way, back then people reject the UMNO version of today, and then you merge together with the UMNO has not changed at all. If anything, the smart ones have been kicked out. So you have the same UMNO who the Malays rejected, and then you have a PH which back then had some level of credibility and support in fighting corruption, in being principled, in wanting reforms, but not abandoning all of those. So you have a combination of both versions who I believe will repel even non-Malays to turn up to vote, because in the end, what they want have been abandoned. And among Malays, thinking that they're very unprincipled, prone to corruption, abuse of power, and at the same time do not even take care of their interests. So you have the worst of both options. However, does that mean that will forever be this case? No. That's why to me, I tell my friends in PN, do not take this lightly. Because voters can shift very quickly. If suddenly PH does an overhaul, right? I think it can change. If Datuk Sri Anwar delivers on all the reforms, and there is proper good economic management, and then there is an overhaul of leadership, especially in BN, you can see many changes taking place. But today, when you're asking about what's happening today,
it's very hard for them.
I think you don't have to listen to what I say, just look at what voters have sent in multiple different by-elections.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you speak a lot about education. In fact, it's quite interesting now. It's an interesting time for education because we are seeing a formulation of a new blueprint as well, right? Because the old one is coming to next year. But before I get to the higher education, let's talk on one level before, matriculation.
Yeah.
So, of course, recently Anwar Ibrahim has come up with his 10A requirement and automatic acceptance and all that. And there's been uproar from the Chinese community and all.
There should be more uproar from the Indian community. Yeah, let me explain why later.
That's why I'm here. Yeah. So tell us, what is your opinion about this new 10A certain you can get in?
This is a problem when you announce a policy without thinking of the consequence. Okay, on the surface, it looks good. On the surface, the announcement says, everyone who gets 10 A's, regardless of race and religion, will be allowed to enter matriculation. And then suddenly, after the announcement, there's a statement saying, however, the 90-10 quota will stay. So 90% to Bumis, 9% to non-Bumis. That means only 10% to Chinese and Indians. Okay? But the 10A policy sticks. Let me explain what it means. I know this because I was in cabinet and I fought on this matter. Because I do not want to see my underprivileged Chinese and Indian brothers having their rights taken away by those who are smart but super rich going to private schools and who get 10 A's. Let me just explain what this means. This new policy. We say every 10 A's, but 90-10 will still continue. So the Malays actually, when people want to racialize this issue, the Malays will be affected. No. 90% is still there. Forget that for a while. So now 10%, the small number of spots among Chinese and Indians now are the ones affected, right? What does this mean? It means Indian and Chinese families who come from underprivileged families, right? For example, in my kawasan in Parit Jawa, right? Those who work day in and day out, and the son and daughter who's also studying is doing 2 or 3 different part-time work to take care of their family, right? And after working so hard, get 7 A's instead of 9 A's. 7 A's, but coming from an underprivileged family, really good extracurricular background, having good leadership skills, right? And coming from an underprivileged socioeconomic background, Now immediately this person who previously would have gotten into the 10% matriculation list because of this other criteria, now will immediately be undercut by someone who goes to private school or international school, who get 10 A's, come from a rich family, can send the son or daughter to 10 different tuition centers. Is that fair?
No.
It's not. You know who will suffer the most? It will actually be the Indian community. Right? So on this matter, I'm very worried. Because the fact of the matter is, we need to look, why was matriculation even conceptualized? Matriculation was conceptualized because people wanted to help the underprivileged families. Right, at that point, initially it was for the Bumiputra community, then it was opened up slowly, 1910. That's why it is a residential system where there is a dorm, you get allowance, so that before you enter university, you will go through this like super hyper skilled tuition, which is called matriculation, without you needing to work outside. That's why you have an allowance, so that then when you go through the university entrance test, you can get in. But today, this new policy, forget the 90% because it's the same status quo. So stop racializing this issue from a Malay perspective. I disagree with the opposition who does that. To me, I'm more concerned about that 10% for my Indian and Chinese brothers and sisters. Because the fact of the matter is today, people from underprivileged families who get 7 A's, 8 A's will not get a place because they will be undercut by those who get 9 or 10 A's from rich families who can afford to send their kids to private international schools or for tuition. That is just categorically unfair.
Maybe I have a question that's in my head. When I talk to you now, you seem like you come off as an inclusive leader, a leader who is more multicultural in your viewpoint. But one cannot deny that you founded Bersatu, a Malay nationalist party.
Sure.
So then you founded Muda.
Yeah.
So which version of you is true? Was it that or is it this?
I'm not going to denounce my past, but I think I learned a lot from my past. Okay, let me just put it this way. When Bersatu was conceptualized, and I shared this in my book, and I think a lot of friends can also corroborate this. I wanted Bersatu to be a multiracial party, and I didn't mince my words. This is not just shared in private, it was also in public. Let me go step by step to prove that. Even before Bersatu was formed, then there were many NGOs who came together, and there's a movement called Deklarasi Rakyat then, Citizens Declaration. And I was part of that movement.
Okay.
I remember in one meeting we had party reps from all sides, Amanah, PKR, DAP. There were even civil society leaders. I remember there was Dato' Ambika, there was Maria Chin. And at meeting, there was a discussion about, what should we do? Myself, to Dr. Mahathir, Tan Sri Muhyiddin, Dato' Sri Mukris, etc. I said in a meeting, without mincing my words, Bersatu should be a multiracial party. You know who told me that Bersatu shouldn't because I'm too naive? Then it wasn't Tan Sri, but Sir Lim Kit Siang was there saying, quite tough. Khalid Samad, I'll never forget, saying, then you'll just be eating into our base, the opposition multiracial base. To fight UMNO, you need to create another UMNO. I'll never forget that. I was called the naive one. I thought I'll get backing from these people, right? You say they're very multiracial, multi-religious. I didn't get the backing. In reality, they actually supported the idea that Bersatu should be a mono-ethnic party. It didn't stop there. Then I remember when Tan Sri Muhyiddin said Saddiq joined Bersatu, I said, okay, however, for the youth wing, I want to ensure that the youth wing is multiracial. And that's why at the beginning, during my tenure, I actually had youth wing leaders who were multiracial. And then Bersatu amended the constitution after. But that's a different story. Not just that. I didn't stop there. 1 month before election, April 2018, I think Malay Mail still has the article. And there was an interview done and they asked my view about this. I said, I hope that in 2 terms, because I have to be realistic, it is a progressive path. In 2 terms, 10 years, Bersatu will be a full multiracial party. I remember I got a lot of brickbats then, but I said, I want to share my belief. Some people may disagree in the party and that's perfectly fine. And that was my belief. And that's why after, fast forward, when I was kicked out from Bersatu, instead of forming another Malay party, I think it's time to embrace a truly multi-ethnic, multi-religious Malaysia via a multiracial
Is that why that you basically declined to join Pejuang?
Pejuang, yeah, exactly. And I told Tun, and it's nothing personal. Yeah. I remember then Tun contacted many times asking, okay, join Pejuang. I said, I have nothing personal against you or Pejuang, but I think the days of me setting up another Malay party and then thinking, never mind, only a Malay party can change the Malays, I think it's over. I think it's time to look 20, 50 years down the road. It's no longer looking just what will win me during the next election. Correct. I may be proven wrong. Bersatu, after me, won a lot more seats. I mean, when I left, when I was kicked out from Bersatu, Tan Sri Muhyiddin won a huge, like triple or quadruple the number of seats Bersatu had. Quadruple the number of seats. So yeah, maybe I may be naive, but it's okay to be naive. It's better to be naive and principled than at such a young age, abandoning all the principles at such a young age. So for me, I'm learning. And to me, the reason I don't want to just, if I could go back to time, will I change anything? No, I value all the mistakes I've done because it has made me a much better person. Forget about politics, it's made me a much better person.
And I don't think there's anything called naive. I mean, reality is always born from someone being very idealistic.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Now, before I get into the matriculation again, I there was a very interesting thing that you said online, which you coined it as equal opportunity instead of equal outcomes.
Correct.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, let me put it this way. And this is something which I firmly believe and I hope Muda will continue to push for.
Okay.
There's a big difference between equal opportunities and equal outcomes. Equal opportunities mean that regardless of your race, religion, and socio-economic background, the opportunity given to you must be an opportunity which is equal. For an example, if you are someone from a poor background, in order for you to compete with someone who comes from a private international school, who doesn't need to do part-time work, can have access to private tuition, is that fair? It's not.
No, it's not fair.
Right? So obviously, you need to create an equal playing field. But that equal playing field must be based on the opportunities granted to you at the beginning. So whether you're poor, you're rich, you're Malay, you're Chinese, you're Indian, the opportunities at the beginning must be the same. Then you get pure merit. You cannot get merit without equal opportunities.
True.
Right? So to me, it's about ensuring that the baseline is fair. Because after that baseline, then it's up to you. It's up to your diligence, your hard work, your creativity, your innovation. Because then you can reach the outcome. What's the difference between equal opportunities and equal outcome? Equal outcome is very different. Even if you're lazy, even if you are incapable, just because you are born into a particular race and religion, in comparison to someone who may come from a racial religious minority, working every day, working hard, the student, really working his or her ass off, to get 10 A's. But in the end, outcome must be the same. That's not fair. So to me, it is the opportunity which matters. And on this is where I'm slightly more sympathetic on having a more policy-centered approach to resolve it. For example, people say in Malaysia, why don't we just remove everything to do about race and religion? Okay, we can sing Kumbaya together thinking that Malaysia will be safe. No. The fact of the matter is today, because of our legacy, our past, you need to have a fusion of both. And on this, I recommend friends to read this professor, a Malaysian, but now in NUS, Lee Hock Aun, talking about how to deal with this matriculation, asasi, education reforms. For example, for the Indian community, right? The Indian community suffered a lot because of past legacy and tradition, when a lot of them were based in estates. And as you know, when you're based in estates, your access to infrastructure, clean water, electricity, good schooling, what more? When you don't own the land, your socio-economic leap will not be as much as those who live in urban centers.
Correct.
Where even if your family owns a small portion of land, even though you come from a poor family then, today you're immediately rich because the land worth so much more.
Yeah.
Education access is better, infrastructure, etc., networking, all of that, right? So are we just going to ignore that context? We shouldn't. We should not ignore that context. That context matters. Are we going to ignore the context today, for an example, for the Indian community? If I'm an Indian and my parents do not have access to tertiary education, I will be 3 times more impeded than a Malay or Chinese family whose parents do not have access to that same form of education.
Definitely. Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is, for you to assess equal opportunity, and I'm not going to run away from equal opportunity, but equal opportunity means that you need to factor in everything else.
That means you start from equal footing.
Correct. So similarly, for an example, I'm pretty sure we will not oppose, let's say for an example, there's an issue of gender discrimination where we need to assist. So to me, we need to look at all of this together. How do we approach it? We approach it through a proper policy framework. That's how we do it, right? So to me, of course, to say that, we can just sing Kumbaya and say race and religion do not matter, I think that's idealistic, but at times too idealistic when you don't get the change which Malaysia actually needs. To me, it's a fusion of both, without losing the basis that there must be equal opportunity at its base.
Well, one can argue then that Muda, even yourself, have been very, very silent on Indian issues. And one of the reforms that I've not heard any politician talk about, I cannot understand. It's beyond me why in Malaysia, every community's welfare is tasked to that respective community leaders. Okay? So like, for example, if you are a Malay, I've never seen you go to a Tamil school and fight. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Maybe you have. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to share some example.
But never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've not heard. If you have, please share, right? Like, for example, like I see, it is accepted that agencies like Mitra, for example, have failed.
Yeah.
Previous versions have failed, right? Maybe Saddiq was on a good path, but then change of government and all that. So you have Indian leaders who have not done much. And then you have, for example, a simple problem. In the Malaysian Indian Social Economic Blueprint that was launched by Saddiq, it said that 45% of B40 students have limited access to preschool.
Yeah.
So you just tweak that one part.
Absolutely.
And then they are on equal footing. Because now they can read. I met one boy the other day. He's in secondary school. He got 0 for his maths. And you know why he got 0? He can't read.
Yeah.
That's happening in today. And what I'm surprised is, why don't leaders like y'all say, you know what, enough. We gave you a chance. You messed it up. Now this is a Malaysian problem. Honestly, YB, I don't care about affirmative action. I don't care about NEP. Have all the luxury you want. But certain things comes with humanity.
Correct.
Compassion. A child's right to education is a God-given right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If an Indian child can't read, what does it matter that you're Malay? I can never understand the stupidity in this country.
Yeah.
Why don't you reform that?
Yeah. I mean, just when you mentioned about government being bad in communication, maybe Muda has to improve a lot more when it comes to communication. And that's a reflection of myself as well.
I'm going to be corrected.
Because I actually have been fighting on these issues so many times. And I agree with you. You don't need to be an Indian to fight on this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I was investigated when I spoke about police brutality afflicting the Indian community.
Yes.
You mentioned about Tamil schools. I cannot agree more. And I can see that happening in my very own constituency, where Tamil schools today are slowly disappearing. You want to talk about funding of schools? I think Tamil schools are worst funded relative to SJKCs and also Sekolah Kebangsaan. So that's a second issue. But at the same time, I think that takes a lot more fundamental changes, because it's not that simple of just throwing money and thinking that will be...
No, I understand that. And the point I'm trying to make here is that it's not that it is impossible to raise the funds needed on a private level, right? You see Chinese people doing it, Chinese associations doing it a lot, and they do it successfully. But that's because the Chinese community are very together. Yeah. They support, and they have very good values in terms of education and all that. When it comes to Tamil schools, the problem is when you have a group of leaders who have failed, I'm waiting for leaders like you to say, listen, this is a Malaysian issue. I'm going down. I don't care about the money. I'm coming down. Let's solve this as a Malaysia. Yeah. Because to all Malays or Chinese who watch this, you don't become lesser of a Malay or Chinese if you support a child to study.
Absolutely.
Okay? But why not do reforms like that? Yeah. Because that reform is so powerful, because it's not in pen and paper, it's in the minds of voters. Now we look at you as someone, a leader who fights for us all. Yeah. Like I've even brought this up to PSM. I told PSM, I said, why don't y'all fight for the Indian bloc? Oh, no, we are multicultural. That is such a lame ass excuse. Sorry for my English, but that's so lame. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you have to acknowledge that specific communities have specific problems which require assistance.
But the who solves it is colorblind. I don't care if Lim Kit Siang or you YB going to solve it. So is that in your plan?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I'll definitely take a lot more attention. No, because to be
I went on a tirade.
No, to be fair with you, I actually have not been looking at this issue a lot. I look a lot more when it comes to matriculation and foundation. On that, I've mentioned it like so many times. And Muda has its policy plan publicly. But on this, I didn't. Yeah. So it's a fair issue which I need to look at.
Now, just another one is that one policy that you were also fighting for was the Political Funding Act, which of course you mentioned, unfortunately, because of the change in government, you didn't have time to complete that. Why was that necessary?
Because in Malaysia today, without the Political Funding Act, we are in a way legitimizing corruption every single day. Let me just put it this way. Regardless of which party you are from and which leader you come from, without Political Funding Act, Malaysia's democracy is susceptible to be bought over by anyone at every single time. Yeah. And this is not just among Malaysians. Effectively, there's a foreign power who wants to buy over Malaysian democracy. It's perfectly legal because there's nothing stopping them from doing so. Why did Datuk Sri Najib, in his legal defense, said that the 2.6 billion is from a Saudi royal? Because that's legal. Obviously, now we know it's not, but that's a legal defense. In Malaysia today, I'm a businessman, you are contesting, you'll most likely become a minister, and today we can generally predict who will become a minister, who won't. Okay, I'll fine you, but when you're in government, you need to give me a direct nego contract. It's a quid pro quo. It is a major issue because there is no political funding act. We don't know who's funding, but worse, at the same time, the level of money politics in Malaysia, it is unreported, unrecorded. You will only know, for example, there's a limit 200,000 per MP. There's a big lie. I can tell you it's a big lie because in the end, that 200,000 is only during the official campaign period. Before the campaign period, or even during the campaign period, okay, it doesn't have to be from me, but it can be from NGOs, my party, they can support. There's no limit there. Why did, for example, Datuk Sri Najib and BN then say that they need billions during election time? If you look at the 200,000 cap, it will not reach billions. But it's billions. I mean, it's crazy amount. And in the end, when we don't have it, I can tell you today, especially now when people have realized, government will change, the ultra-rich will be very smart in funding all parties so that their interests will be taken care, whoever wins election. And I'm not anti-rich people, I'm not. However, I am anti-state capture, where a small group of people can capture the whole system of government.
Oligarchs,
because of the monetary influence they have.
Definitely, yeah.
So, to me, that political funding is essential. Sad part is, I thought at least this government would do it. To me, that's such a low-hanging fruit, you know. But today, it's the same thing. I mean, they said they will not do direct negotiations are still taking place. Surat sokongan bersertakan contract is still about contracts still taking place. I mean, I do not know what else. I mean, you want to talk about using taxpayers' money for by-elections to win over votes. They're still doing the same thing. So on this, I'm getting quite disenchanted. But the best way to stop the disenchantment is through institutional reform.
Now, again, on that point, one of the things that I notice about the policies that you champion, and I want to ask you others, but then I think because we are also in consideration of time, because like things like you talk about two-term prime minister and all that, which I disagree because I think policies can only be enacted with time, right? I'm a fan of the previous BN regime time when you had time. But anyway, we'll get to that maybe on a second session, if you will. But the policies that you champion sometimes may not be an immediate concern for voters. See, like if you're talking about funding acts, you're talking about legislative changes and all that, prime minister terms and all that. This is not the same as, say, jobs, rising costs, stagnant salaries, etc. Those kind of things.
You're right.
So could this be the reason why Muda is a political party? And perhaps yourself, because now that I'm talking to you, I say, bloody hell, I'm going to vote for this guy. Because you come off as a multicultural person. Could these issues that you're fighting for hinder the traction that Muda and yourself could potentially have with voters?
You are absolutely right. To be very frank and honest, almost all the traction I get on social media is when I talk about all the issues which you mentioned at the end. How to deal with cost of living, education reforms, public transportation, the chronic underemployment affecting young people, how young people today are a sandwich generation because of stagnancy of wages and they need to take care of their parents who will retire without proper retirement account. These are all real issues. And I've actually mentioned this a lot with solutions to the government about the gig economy and today how they don't have a social safety net because they don't have EPF and also so even then it came quite late. To be honest, these are actually issues which I want to focus on. However, in order for all these issues to take center stage, you need the institutional reforms. I show for an example. Without political funding act, how do I deal with increasing cost of living when government still perpetuates all the monopolies and oligopolies on all the imported items? Because in the end, they are the ones who fund the government today, right? So I can scream about it in parliament. These are the solutions, but the government will never do the solutions which I propose because there is political capture. I show another example, right? When it comes to, let's say, issues of for the gig economy. Gig economy where they must be adequately compensated, especially when it comes to an EPF. It doesn't have to be exact EPF because they're not an employee, But there can be a middle ground. And there are many other examples where this can take place. Yeah, I can scream about that in Parliament. But again, without a base of political funding act or freedom of expression for people to raise this up or freedom of media for people to talk about this, in the end, this issue will just be a few people shouting and screaming, but the government will just not listen and care. So to me, it's complementary of one another. And the thing why I always care about institutional reforms is because of the word institution. Because one thing which I've learned in politics, and I've made my fair share of mistakes, trust me, I have. I can have another session where all the mistakes I've made, right? But one thing which I've learned is that the most essential ingredient for Malaysia to become a developed country, it's not me, it's not Syed Saddiq or leaders or Muda or parties. The answer lies in strong institutions. Because institutions outlast political personalities. Institutions check on personalities like myself. Institutions ensure that whoever is in power, Malaysia will be on self-driving mode, moving forward.
But maybe, perhaps the answer then is not to stop fighting for these reforms. Because you must understand that when you talk about legislative changes and reforms, the size, the sheer magnitude of that problem may sort of be too overwhelming for voters. And they may then come up to the conclusion that, no, this is going to take time. He's going to need a majority in parliament, or, Muda needs to maybe have 40 seats or stuff like that. Maybe fight about that, but flip the ratio. Instead of being 70-30, 70 legislative, the media about you, flip it to, focus on these issues.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I 110%.
Are you hiring a PR person? I'm putting my CV.
Hopefully the current batch of Muda leaders will listen to this. No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I will be a loyal Muda member supporting.
Watching for them to change. Yeah. Okay, so in closing, I want to get to Muda now, because I have to ask you one question. In fact, I was talking to a few of your members. Muda has recently announced a revision of your membership system, whereby you are no longer going for the mass-based approach. People have to apply, then people have to undergo Sekolah Muda. Sounds very feudal. Why is this revision happening? Why is it needed?
I hope I'm the best person to answer this, but I can tell you, my friend, I'm not, because I'm not part of the leadership and the decision-making process. And when I say that I resign, I properly resign. I'm not the one resigning with strings on puppet. No.
You're not doing a Tun Mahathir.
No, I'm not. I mean, they are really independent and interesting. I actually want to find out myself. So after this,
maybe we
there's
should.
one leader in front of us, so we'll ask,
maybe you should answer.
What is this Sekolah Muda?
Now, I mean, in your case, and I think let's bring it to a closing. I think there's two questions I want to know from you. What is your hope for Muda? What is your vision for the party? You did found the party. What's your vision for it?
My vision is for Muda to be the bastion of fighting for freedom and meritocracy and equal opportunities in Malaysia, but ultimately to make Malaysia a developed country in which is governed with strong institutions. That's the main focus. It is a Malaysia in which, regardless of race and religion, when you work hard, you can climb up the socio-economic ladder like a kid who's born into a rich family. And it is that world which I want to live in. And I want Malaysia to be the bastion of hope in this region.
Okay, just one more add-on. Sorry, I have to ask. Do you think that this policy of inclusiveness will ride well with the majority Malay base? Yes,
I think we just need to explain it and realize that what's hindering genuine progress for the country are bad policies. That's it. I mean, I mentioned just now in the end, it's about finding that middle path, right? I mean, just help me understand how, for an example, selling land or houses to hyper-rich Malays at a discount would miraculously help the Malay community. Or giving direct nego contracts to specific contractors would miraculously make the community much better. What would make the community better, I agree, is in scholarships, education reforms, ensuring that they can speak at least not just good English, but to me, being trilingual, being very good in maths and science, scoring well in PISA rankings. This is what matters. And on this, I have to really look up to the Premier of Sarawak. I think some of the changes he's doing on education there
he's very
is something which, man, I think we should be doing here.
Yeah, but then Sarawak is known for that. They are like a different country anyway.
But this is where I think, as a policymaker, I've learned, when you cannot do it, you decentralize power. So you look at the late Deng Xiaoping. How did he open up China, right? And uplift 500 million from absolute poverty to the middle class. He realized then if he were just to embrace capitalism, he would be removed. What he did was he decentralized. He allowed Shanghai. He allowed specific parts of China to open up and to be a so-called test case, right? And then when that particular area succeed and flourish, then it is expanded elsewhere. In Malaysia, and I think that's the beauty of Malaysia, it is about decentralization. If, for example, Kelantan and Terengganu want to pick their path of change, let them, right? But that means we can allow Sarawak, we can allow Penang, we can allow Sabah to also experiment. And then after that, if all the data which we have, we can look, who has the best education system? Who has the best economic projections, etc., etc. That's the beauty of Malaysia. A federation allows you to experiment via decentralization.
And then create a system based on what are the data.
Correct.
Yeah, you can collect it.
China did that effectively. Malaysia, being a federation, should do the same.
Okay, lastly, YB. Of course, your entire political career, as I said early in the start, is filled with ups and downs and surprises. So what's the view for you? I mean, your personal vision for your career?
My personal
and sorry,
vision.
one more thing. Will you be fighting for more Indian issues?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think you raised up an issue which I have not looked into in depth. I know of a few reporters from Makalau side who have spoken to me about it, but that's more about funding. I think I need to start doing my own research about it. So that's one. But secondarily, about my own career, I just want to serve. I mean, it sounds as cliche as possible, but once you put too much expectation on position, I think my fear is I'll lose myself. I just want to serve. And I hope I will not be in politics for too long.
Really?
Because I want to be a teacher one day. I want to go back to teaching.
When do you see that end, that shift?
When I lose in elections, which I will. There will be a day which I will lose. If not next election, there will be a time. Because Malaysian politics is very dynamic. I don't want to be in politics forever. And there are many ways to serve Malaysia.
So can we say 50? That's when you say enough, I retire, and then
we'll see then.
We'll see then.
Still far away, man. Like 31.
So thank you so much, Babi. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, buddy.
I really enjoy talking to you, and I think more Malaysians need to hear about your multicultural views and the truth that you have spoken today. I didn't know that Lim Kit Siang was for the Malay Nationalist Party. I'm going to send that to FMT and see what happens. Let's light a fire.
You check, there are a few people there. There's Kit Siang, there's Khalid Samad, there's Datuk Ambiga. I think there was Mara Chin, and obviously there's
Datuk Ambiga was for the Malay Nationalist Party.
No, I mean, then at that point in time, there was a whole group of people.
This is gonna get some comments. But anyway, honest to God, I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Very inspiring journey you've had. So guys, that's all for today. If you guys have any thoughts, please share in the comment section. If you guys want to connect and have your questions shared with YB Saddiq, please share it on the comments and I'll send it to him. Hopefully he answers from his busy schedule. But if you, again, as always, please like, share, subscribe. I hope to have you on again. There's still, I think, 10 questions that are incomplete, but we hope to. But thank you for making time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. For all of you all, take care, guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.